Hi, Rami.
Hey, Neve. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good. Good to see you.
There
Hi,
it is.
Hello, everybody. Good to see you all.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Oh.
Hey.
Namaste, everybody.
Hi, George.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Hi, Ram.
Hi,
Hi.
George.
Oh,
Dov, can you hear us?
I can, thank you.
Okay,
It's a little overwhelming.
Miko, can you hear?
Yeah, sure.
Great.
Here I am.
Hi, Bob.
Hi.
Can you hear us well?
Yes.
Wonderful. Hi, Catherine. Can you hear us?
Yes. Hi, Rami.
Hi. And Koho, I see you joined. If you want to stay without video or audio, that's fine. But welcome.
He's without both.
Yeah, there.
But your microphone is turned off.
Yeah.
And for mine. There you go.
Koho, can you hear us?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your patience as we just do a little check-in for the technology. Matt, can you hear us well? Great. And it's Jisujo. Hi, Jisujo. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for being on time. We actually sold out on this meeting. We're expecting about 20 people, so a few more people may join. So maybe just let's take a moment of silence and welcome more people if they join, and we'll start in a minute. And I'll just mute everyone for now. Hi, welcome, Kinneret. We're just taking a moment of silence, welcoming people in. Thank you, everyone, and welcome. This is wonderful to see this big group. The subject of the plunges seemed to be very exciting to a lot of people, and actually more people wanted to join, but we wanted to keep it as intimate as possible so we can also share with everyone. But it's wonderful to see the energy around that. I think I'm familiar with most everyone. I'm not sure if I met you, Jill, and I hope you hear us well. I see that you're muted and your video is off, which is fine if you want to remain that way. I see Roland is joining. I'm familiar with most of you, and I think most of you are familiar with me, so maybe just for the sake of Jill, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Rami Efal. I'm the Executive Director of Zen Peacemakers International. And the purpose of this meeting has been really continuing a series of meetings that we've been doing every month. First and foremost, to just connect. We have this amazing community all around the world, and in a moment, all of us will share a little bit from where we're calling from. And there's a real awe in that I feel with connecting at the same time with all of us, and I see more people joining. So this is the first purpose of these meetings. From these connections is the first seeds of further actions and further loving action come from. So this is why this is the first purpose. And we have some meetings that are just open subject council for people to share, and some of them have specific themes like this one. And the idea of doing the meeting around the plunges came up to me when I really realized that this is one of the special offerings that Zen Peacemakers have been offering for, since Bernie started going on the streets. And some people in this crowd, and we'll hear from you in a bit, have been really taking this and pushing the edges in terms of what these plunges can be. And we'll hear more about them, but in a nutshell, these are real just opportunities of practicing the three tenets, which are the principles of everything that we do here in Zen Peacemakers, and how we develop and move into our actions. They can be completely formless, street retreats, or they can be worked around a particular theme. And they differ from bearing witness retreats, where they're so much less structured. There's so much more of not knowing into how we go into them. So there's a lot of interest in it. People have been reaching out to me and to some of you, as people who have been working with plunges. There's a lot of interest. A lot of people are wanting to apply these to fields of life that they're interested in and that they want to contribute to. So I thought, why don't we just have a meeting around this, have some people who have experience with that, people who are willing and wishing to do this more, and just reflect on this. And so that's the intention for the call. I see more people joined us. Everyone, you're free to stay with your video off or on with your. I'll just ask that we keep the mics off, and I'll give the mic if you raise your hand if you would like to speak. So I would love to just start just with a quick round of just hearing people's names, where they're from, maybe a word or two of what brought them to the call, and just kind of start adding everybody's voices to the call. So what I'll do is I'll just call on people because we have a lot. So I'll just call, and maybe we'll start with Niamh, please.
Okay. Hi, I'm Niamh, and I'm in Dublin in Ireland. And I did a plunge retreat day in January, and I'd like to share a little bit of that, but also really hear other people's experiences of doing these days as well. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Niamh. Yeah, and I would love it a little further on. I'll ask you to speak a little bit about the day that you created. Thank you. Barbara, Roland.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Barbara Wegmuller from Switzerland. I am a student of Bernie and Eve and a member of the ZPI board and also of the CPO group, transition group. So my learning with Bernie was all about plunges. I think he used to create plunges for me all the time. So it's really an issue where I can share a little bit about. And I really like plunges. I think all our lives are full of plunges. So I'm looking forward to listen to all of you and to learn more from all of you and to meet you here on this platform. So thank you, Rami, for inviting me. Thanks so much.
So I'm Roland, staying with Barbara, living together, I have a family in Bern, Switzerland. And yeah, it's the same for me. I did a lot of plunges with Bernie or alone, and we are looking forward to have a plunge in Bremen, a street retreat, and then the Auschwitz retreat and others we did. So I'm happy to be here and to share.
Thank you, Barbara. Roland. Genro, please.
Good morning, everybody. Nice to see your faces, old friends, and some I've never seen before. So nice to see you. Welcome. I'm in New York City, just actually north a little bit of the city. And looking forward to hearing everybody's good energy around plunges and retreats and all. I've been doing them for a few years and look forward to doing them for a few more years. So thanks, everybody.
Great, thank you, Genro. George.
Good morning, everyone. I'm George Gallagher in Phoenix, Arizona. And this is my introduction to plunges. It may come as no surprise, but on Friday, I like to wear my new t-shirt, which is Greta Thunberg and her sign. Thank you, Rami, everyone.
Great, thanks, George. Mikko.
Hello, I'm Mikko. Yes, I'm from Helsinki. And we did our first street retreat here in Helsinki in 2017 and probably will do another one sometime. But last year we did our first bearing witness retreat here to the Finnish Civil War prison camps, which were the first concentration camps in Europe. And we're going to have that same experience now in this July with my teacher, Frank de Waal from Belgium. And I'm also been actively involved with the Extinction Rebellion, and that's kind of plunge for me too. I'm part of their organization, trying to help them as best as I can. Yes, thank you. It's good to see you all.
Thanks, Mikko. Love, please.
Thank you. I'm Dove. It's so nice to see Genro, Barbara, Roland, Iris. I met you, Iris, in Rwanda. And so it's very, very sweet. And a couple of people who I've seen on other of these talks. I'm in Philadelphia, and I don't know what draws me to street retreats, but I've done 4. 3 of them have been with Genro. I guess if I point, I don't know if I point if everyone has the same people in the same spot, but for me, Genro's over there. And there's just something that I don't understand about street retreats. That it just resonates and goes really deep for me, and I'm hoping to do another one soon. And I've never done one on my own, and I think I need to push myself to do a one on my own, and see how that, even if I just wander the streets all night, I'll be fine. So I'm thinking about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Dov. Matt.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matt, and I live in Washington, D.C., or just outside of it. Done a couple street retreats, and I'm planning to go to Auschwitz this fall. And I'm actually interested in journeying to figure out how to do something like a plunge for my local group, for those that maybe aren't going to be able to go out on the streets or aren't able to travel to some of these more widely put on events by ZPI. So I'm sort of here to kind of collect ideas or to pick up seeds. So I appreciate it.
Great. Welcome, Matt. Good to see you again. Bob, please.
Hi, I'm Bob Urkaku, and my plunge was in Auschwitz, and I feel like I have just taken a different plunge, as it were. I've left New York after being there for about 50 years, and I have moved to Virginia Beach, Virginia, and this is largely because my daughters are here, but I'm here wondering, you know, about looking at this move as itself a plunge, and wondering how to keep my eyes and ears open to what the need is here, and where the many kinds of suffering are being expressed in this area. And so I will, I have started a Zen center here, and I've gotten a nice initial response. So hopefully that will also be part of my eyes and ears, is the the people who will come and sit. So I'm looking for a plunge, and so I thought this would be a great place to have the conversation. So thank you all.
Welcome. Thank you, Bob. Catherine Gervasi.
Hello, can you hear me? You can hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Hello, everyone. I'm sitting in southern Colorado. I have never been on a plunge or a street retreat. I've been recently introduced to this idea, this concept, this perspective, and I can't think of anything that makes more sense to me. My first plunge will be in July. I'll be participating in the Native American plunge. And so I've been like practicing, like, isn't every moment an opportunity for bearing witness and practicing, not knowing. So that's been my work as of late. So I look forward to the deepening of experience with others in this process. And I look forward today to learning from you and maybe asking some questions. So thank you, Rami, for inviting me.
Wonderful. Thank you. Welcome, Catherine. Koho.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you. So my experience with plunge started with the formal Zen. So plunging in a wall surface, plunging to myself. And then I met Bernie and Genro, Barbara, and Roland, my beloved teachers, in this way. And street retreats, Auschwitz retreat. And I try to walk in this way, plunging in my real life. So I'm a Brazilian living in Switzerland. So it's like to bring in two very different worlds. This year we have had a wonderful street retreat in Rio. Auschwitz is always a wonderful school about my humanity. Yeah, I'm happy to be here with you and Thanks, Rami, for organizing this meeting.
Welcome, Koho. Jitsujo.
Hi everyone, I'm Jitsujo from Los Angeles, Zen Center of Los Angeles. I practice as a priest in training there. And I just was curious about this idea of plunge. I guess I always thought of a plunge as, you know, if someone asked me to do a new position or to step into anything new, that's a plunge for me. And yeah, just a call to expand. And I'm interested in, you know, I'm interested in kind of creating that container for other people to plunge. I think that's why I'm here, or what I'm interested in knowing how each of you have created retreats. I've done, you know, some half-day or full-day bearing witness retreats, a handful of them, but never any longer outside of the Zen Center. So yeah, I'm just curious about that.
Thank you. Ando, please.
Okay. Hi, I'm Ando or Caneret. And I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico right now, in a lovely tent. And I've been on a few plunges over the last few years. And then this past August, I was part of putting one together here in just an hour from here in Los Alamos, New Mexico, where the first 3 nuclear bombs were developed. And so we had a plunge on Hiroshima Day at the Los Alamos laboratories on the lawn outside. And that was the first time that I was part of working with others to imagine what the space would be like and the ceremony, what that might be like. Anyways, I look forward to hearing more, and really sweet to be on the call. Thank you.
Thanks, Ando. Iris.
Hi, everyone. And thank you, Rami, for inviting me. So I'm Iris from Israel, Tel Aviv. And I am a student now of Barbara. And I've just came back from almost 9 days, I think, in Switzerland, having the workshop with Yoho and practicing with Barbara. I'm attending, I think, Auschwitz retreat almost every year, I think, since 2009 or 10. I've been also to Rwanda and Native American, the first one, and I was in the group of that was planning the bearing witness retreat in Bosnia. Yes, and I had planned and I've the plunge in Israel Palestine last year with our small Southern European circle. So we had Barbara and Roland and Ovidio and Tani and I. It was small but very intensive. We were together in the plunge, I think, for five or 6 days, meeting many people in Israel, Palestine activists. We spent time in the in Bethlehem and in my house. We attended the alternative memorial ceremony of Palestinians and the Israelis who lost their beloved ones in the conflict. And yes, I'm about to plan the plunge in Israel Palestine next year. So that's it for the time being.
Great, thanks, Iris. Enkyo, welcome. Would you like to say a few words?
Yes. I don't think I was invited to this, but somehow I received. Thank you. I was mixed up. I thought this was a Native American group, but I'm delighted. It's like falling into something, and it's like, oh, this is a great place to be and to listen to everyone. I'm a New Yorker, but I am in Los Angeles right now because I have to attend some meetings here. I was on maybe 4 or 5 of the first Auschwitz retreats. They profoundly changed me, changed my life and my way of working with otherness, and it was a wonderful retreat. I also, for 6 years, I went every year to Nepal with Joan Halifax on the medical treks, which is a different kind of bearing witness. It certainly doesn't follow the guidelines, but if your heart is opened by the concept of bearing witness, it's everywhere that you encounter. I've been on many street retreats. I love to go on street retreats because to drop away and to reactivate that bearing witness. And I'm finally able to go on the Native American retreat this year, which I'm really looking forward to. It's a kind of area that I haven't paid enough attention to. And I know this is the way for me to find out what it is I can do. So I'm delighted to listen to all of you and learn from you.
Great, thanks, Enkyo. I'm glad you crashed the party. Jill, good to see you again. Thanks for joining.
My apologies for having the picture up before I was walking the dog. I am delighted to be here, and I have heard of a plunge or a retreat. I'm very curious about them. Delighted to be here to listen and to learn. Thanks.
Great. Welcome. Thank you. Mark.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So hello, everybody. I'm calling in from Arizona. I know of the Zen Peacemakers through Fleet Mall. So did Path of Freedom, and I've been working at a prison here south of town. And I read Bernie's book. Obviously, I would hope everyone here has read Bearing Witness. It touched me, and I'm just here to try and figure out what you guys are up to. The Auschwitz idea appeals to me for not just bearing witness, but also for what it would do to me as far as my self-image and my ego is concerned. And the same thought comes to mind when Zen peacemakers live on the streets. So that's why I'm here, is just to learn a little bit more about what you guys are up to.
Great. Thanks. Welcome, Mark. Nikki, I see that your video is off and you're muted. I'm not sure if you'd like to share. You're welcome to. I'll unmute you for just a moment if you'd like to. Otherwise, please feel free to stay quiet if you'd like that.
Yes, hello. My name is Nicole from Vienna.
Oh, huh.
Yeah, hi. So somehow I couldn't get in with my computer, so I'm here with my iPad. I've been to Auschwitz last November. First thing I was doing was the Zen Peacemakers, and I really tried to join the webinars if possible, because I'm always really inspired. I'm not in a plunge right now, but I've been doing things with refugees here in Vienna, and I'm glad I can be part of this today. Thank you.
Wonderful. Good to hear you again, Nikki. So thank you. So first of all, I'm just appreciating, people, all of you calling from so many different parts of the world and who apply this in so many places. And it's, you heard from some of the people who shared that I specifically invited them because it came up in one of our conversations, some of their experiences, and I thought it would be wonderful to have them share that. Beyond that, this meeting was open to all members who wanted to join. What I'm seeing from the people who came on the call is that we have, I would say, three very interesting groups. The first group is people who have been training a lot with Bernie for decades and have been taking this practice really deeply and have been fundamental in creating some of the programs that we're running now. So, for example, Barbara and Roland and Genro and Enkyo have been, like you heard, they've been part of the Bearing Witness legacy for decades. And I would love to pose a question to the four of you in a moment. And then the second group is a group that have been working with these teachers to create more retreats and more programs. And Niamh is one of Niamh has her own experiences, but Iris and Miko and Koho. And this is another group that I was interested in to hear from, what it's like to organize one. Like, what is it like to actually put it together, the components, the challenges that came up with, that you found. And then, the rest of us who are just interested to hear, maybe we've never been on a program or a plunge and we just want to hear more and ask questions or just share from our experience of how that is informing our life now. So I would first love to return to that first group, which is Enkyo, Genro, Roland, and Barbara. And I would love to hear from you about the spirit. What is that? What is the spirit that when you go on a plunge, you carry with? In some of our retreats in Auschwitz, for example, some of you hold this role called spirit holder. So this is not about the Bearing Witness retreats only, but this is the plunges, the places that you go. And so I would love to open it up and to the four of you and hear from your experience. And I'm so glad to have Enkyo here to have you join us. Thank you. Yeah, Barbara.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I go to Auschwitz to be there as the spirit holder, of course I go with the three tenets. This is my main practice, and it's in all my life my main practice. And that means I try to be as open as possible to the moment, to just be there at this very moment and see what is there, what the moment is asking for me, meeting new people, meeting people I knew before in a new spirit, to be really, really right there at this very moment, and not having any fixed ideas and not carrying all stories with me or ideas how it would be. Even I was there as a spirit holder 19 times now, or at the retreat, and for many years as a spirit holder. Of course, we have some concepts in doing this retreat, but I know that every retreat will be different because we are in a new moment with new people, and so I try really to be just there, and as much with an open heart and mind as much as possible, and then to see what the moment brings to me, and answer as best as I can in the situation, and support the moment and the people, the situation, as best as I can. I would say this is how I try to embody the 3 tenets. And to serve, to be there to serve, of course. This is why I'm there.
I can say that I also found answers during the Auschwitz retreat, for example. I found answers for my life, because this is the technique of coming to the not knowing and bearing witness. This is the training that also opens not only what happens at the place, it's also what happens in myself. I go with myself there, and often I take a question with me or a koan. It's like, for me, Auschwitz is like taking with me a koan all the time, and then hoping that the answer comes up. And my experience is that it's very helpful to do this praxis for the others and for myself. And when I go, the expectation is this might be an expectation that or a hope that when I go there, but every retreat for me was very different. So every was really a plunge. Every retreat was a plunge for me, and in a way a new beginning, starting from the scratch concerning my thinking.
Enkyo, please.
Yes, I just so resonate with what they've just said, the idea of the 3 tenets and bearing witness to one's own fixed ideas as we begin. You know, very often most of us are kind of social justice warriors, and we're ready to confirm what we think rather than open our minds and experience wholly. And that when Barbara was talking about, you know, finally she just goes there to Auschwitz and responds, because she's done so much work with the 3 tenets, the not knowing, the bearing witness, and only then moving into action. It's so important. A few of my teachers went with me to the Legacy Museum of Enslavement in Alabama. We've just come back, and that retreat was about bearing witness very much to the mass incarceration in this country of people of color. But rather than going with all our ideas and our opinions, we just allowed our hearts to be broken and to see the history and to bear witness to that before moving into any kind of action. And it completely changes the tone that we use when we begin to meet people with different views about criminal justice these days. So I found it very healing, and that was just last week. I continue to learn and continue to see the plunging into this not knowing allows us to bear witness, and it's the brilliance of all the plunges, no matter what form they might take. I'm so happy to see so many people interested in doing this work.
Genro, would you like to say a word?
Sure. I've been thinking, and I really appreciate what Enkyo and Roland and Barbara have shared so far. I've been thinking that when Bernie started the street retreats, it came out of an intense desire for him to confront something that he was afraid of and to face that. And fortunately, he had a lot of students around him who helped him on the first street retreat, which I think was in New York. But for me, that's what I'm doing when I'm doing retreats, is particularly new ones, is going into places and peoples that I have no experience with, that my fixed ideas and concepts would lead me to conclusions of they must be like this or that, and blowing them wide open from the experience, finding that none of my ideas hold and none of my opinions are correct, and that I love everybody that I meet unconditionally. And so these bearing witness retreats for me are ways to crack the nut of our fixedness and to really open up our spiritual practice in ways we can't imagine. Because our lives, my life, has been deeply shifted by these experiences. I can't imagine otherwise. And to read about not knowing in a book and then to experience it by being thrust into a place where we have no context whatsoever, other than some thoughts we might have, is something entirely different. And that not knowing widens our minds expansively so that we can be touched by everything around us. And that leads to bearing witness and loving actions all the time. And for me, these retreats are not singular events, but experiences that should lead us to live like that, to live with awakeness and to live with the adventure of every moment and every experience. So it's an ongoing practice for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Genro, and Enkyo, Barbara, and Roland. I think all of you spoke about the three tenets and kind of cracking the nut in terms of arriving in new and cracking the heart. And I also heard, and I think Genro mentioned a little bit about it, but also Enkyo spoke about the location, the place she just came back from. And I'm curious to ask the four of you about the role of the place. In Hebrew, the word makom is actually one of the words for God. So hamakom, the location, is where we meet that. I'm curious if you can speak about the importance of the choice of the place and how that informs the specificity of the place. If that question resonates for you, if that is an important piece of what you see in a plunge. Yeah, Barbara.
Yeah, I mean, Auschwitz for sure is such a strong place. This is an incredible place where everybody just is overwhelmed of seeing this huge place organized to torture people, to kill people. It's such a strong one. The whole energy there is so strong. The teachings really speak to us from the place, what we see about the fences and the hugeness and the barracks and all of that. This is very unique. On the other hand, I'm sure that plunges can also happen in our very normal lives. I mean, giving birth is just a plunge for every woman. Being in love is just a huge place for all of us. So I think we all experience plunges for sure in our own life, but the places that we don't know, or where we invite people where we don't know, like Roland and I, we had a plunge when we invited a whole family coming from the war in Syria for a whole week, and where we experienced that one of the members never answered to our English language, and we had the feeling that the person would not understand the English, so he only spoke with family members, and only after 6 days being with us, when all his family members left, he started to speak with us very fluently English. So in a way, I think we can have really experiences and plunges all the time if we are open. But for me, for sure, was Auschwitz life-changing. When I was in 1999, the first time in Auschwitz, it changed really my life, and in a way, it never ended, this retreat. So I really experienced to be more awake, I think, in my own life, and maybe therefore also recognize more of these plunges that we all experience. So I think the place can be very, very important. I was also in Rwanda, where the place, of course, also speaks a lot, and the people there, and Bosnia, and in India, when we were when we were in South Dakota with native people, and also with Bernie in south of India, where we met the Dalits, and where we wanted to work with Dalits, support Dalits, this untouchable, called untouchable groups of people. And we found out that there were many, many levels of untouchable peoples, even fighting against each other. So I think as soon as we do steps in places and towards people don't know, we just learn such a lot of things, and all our ideas and concepts fall apart in a way. So that opens up our minds and hearts, so that we can recognize them more and more, all these places where we feel like the sin places, as Enkyo speaks in so beautifully in her book. For me, all the places where we do plunges, there are for me these very sin places where we fall in another dimension of learning, I think. So thank you.
Thank you. So Rami, I just wanted to agree with Barbara so much. And when she talked about in her own home bearing witness, it reminded me of my first street retreat, one of the early ones with Bernie. We went to my neighborhood where I lived and worked, but it wasn't my neighborhood. It was so amazing. I would, see my colleagues at the university. They wouldn't see me because I was on the ground and I was part of the not having generation. But to go to place is so important, to go to your own place and see what you never see. The soup kitchen, the bench on the park you would normally sit at, and talking with the people. Completely shifted my understanding about being of service and how to serve. It was life-changing. And the place made a difference because it's the same place I lived. And it was life-changing. And I'm so happy that so many people are interested in doing this work, and especially Genro, who takes so many people on the streets. So thank you.
Genro, I'm curious if you have a word you'd like to add?
The thing that I'm thinking of is that, thank you, Enkyo, for saying what you did about the whole new experience of your neighborhood. Every day when I'm in New York, I have a pattern of getting on a train close to my house and taking it to Grand Central Station and going through that big place and entering a subway and then another subway and a bus and going to my gym where I meet Enkyo sometimes. And that's a very fixed pattern of how I see New York and how I think of New York. And I'm imagining that so many people in their daily routines are in similar patterns like that are repeatable just every day and almost every detail. Although they're really not repeating, we think they are. And so we go unconscious during that time because we're just doing our normal thing in our normal life. And we don't get the opportunity to open up the place by being awake, by really not knowing and by really bearing witness and just really experiencing what we're experiencing. So I love the idea of Makom. And for me, every place is a holy place. All I have to do is open my eyes and breathe and be here to really experience it in a completely different way and be joyful in it for the most part. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Genro. Before I would ask the second group to say a few words, I'm curious, maybe take a couple of questions to Barbara, Genro, and Roland and Enkyo from the rest of the group. If anybody has one, raise your hand. Yeah, Jitsujo, please.
Well, I'm just curious about when you're doing a retreat or have engaged in a retreat, like in council, there's that turning into the skid, or when the shadow arises, how to turn into the skid. I didn't know if there was any stories or...
Jitsujo, can you say what do you mean turn into the skid for the non-English speakers here? What do you mean when you say that?
So it's kind of like when you're going along and you're practicing not knowing, and then all of a sudden you hit the wall, or just, the shadow arises, the thing that you least expected, the worst. It could be the worst thing. It could just be a surprise. And so turning into the skid is just going into that and not turning away. To me, that's the scariest time and what to do. And so I just didn't know if you have any survival stories.
Yeah, Genro.
I'll take a quick stab. So, yeah, being in retreat and being responsible for the group is a big responsibility. So the leaders, the spirit holders, their main job is to stay awake and feel when people are having trouble. One time, and this I prescribe for all times when we run into the big issues. We were on a street retreat in Vancouver, British Columbia, on the island. And, or is that Victoria? Victoria, we were in Victoria. And I'd had a conversation with somebody who was on the retreat that said that they had a wedding and they might have to leave 2 days into the retreat. And I said, don't come. I said, because we don't want to lose anybody. It always creates a big problem. And so she came. And on the second day, she announced to everybody she was leaving because she had a wedding to attend. And so we did a short process with her, let her go. And then what we did is we turned into the whole group and sat for an hour talking about how that had affected everybody. I mean, I had tried to plan with the lady who'd left in advance to not have that come up as an issue or a problem or a challenge for everybody. It's like breaking a family. It's like having a divorce or something like that. And so the real key is to immediately process when things come up like that, so that people can readjust, state their feelings, state their emotional states, their issues with it, air it, and share it, and then move along. So, but it's always important not to avoid, because if we avoid, then everybody's suffering more. So it's always a matter of taking care of things in the moment as fast as possible. And they get taken care of. I mean, we haven't had any casualties that I'm aware of. So far, so good. Thank you.
Thanks, Teacher Genro. I'm curious with Jitsujo, did that answer your question? Do you have a follow-up?
No, that's fine. I just was asking.
Great. Thank you. Maybe one more question before we move on. Yeah, Jill, please.
And so I guess one of my questions, because I'm still learning at this from the very beginning, is I understand the creation of whether you would call it a container or a safe space or that kind of thing. I'm wondering if there is any kind of internal structure as to what goes on during a plunge. So I don't even know if that's the right question to ask, but it's what percolates for me.
Yeah. I think that's a great segue to the next section. So maybe at this point I'll introduce Iris, Miko, and Koho, and Niv. And the four of you worked and spoke to me about your work with some of these teachers here, about how you put together retreats, and from the more of the organizer side, exactly from the structure side. And sometimes those are held by the same, the person who is leading the retreat, and sometimes it's another role. And I know Iris worked with Barbara and Roland and a few others, but Iris organized a really multi-day, really robust program in Israel and Palestine. So that's why I wanted to have Iris here and hear a bit about from her experience. And Koho has been both collaborating with Genro, but also leading street retreats. And they've recently been on the streets in Rio and in Italy. And it wasn't just a street retreat, there was also bearing witness to refugees there. And so I'm very curious also in Koho about your experience. Miko paired with Roshi Frank de Vol from Belgium, both for street retreats and on the bearing witness to the concentration camps in Finland. And Niv, after participating in a street retreat with Miko and Frank de Vol, and then coming on the Auschwitz retreat with us last year, was just so motivated with a particular cause that happened in her community in Dublin that she wanted to address that in a way that was creative for her. And so I would love the four of you. Where's Iris? Is Iris still here? Iris, yeah. Iris, Koho, Miko, and Eve. Just maybe speak a little bit about that process of the organizing and also working with, whether you worked with a spirit holder or a teacher or a leader, or if you didn't, what resources did you have? And I do want to, I think Genro said that earlier, that these plunges, particularly obviously the one that ZPI is running, but there's a lot of responsibility, particularly if there's other people that are led. So this call itself, this is not a training program right now. We're just really reflecting and taking some of the wisdom. And I encourage anybody who is interested in doing more plunges and developing more plunges to first of all connect to the resources that are available, and whether it's those teachers or me from the staff, or and not just to go on your own, because there's a lot out there. So I'll hand the mic to the four of you. If anyone wants to lead first, just raise your hand. Iris, Koho, Miko, and Neve. And actually also Kinneret, I know that also Kinneret did actually a few things on her own and with other people. So if Kinneret also wants to just jump in on this point, please. Yeah, Iris. And I just, before you begin, I just want to acknowledge that we have about 25 minutes. So maybe just say a few words, you can describe your process, and we can hear from the rest of this group and then take questions. So let's just be considerate of the time and everybody here. Thank you.
So I think that the main resource for me was Bernie. Because since I met Bernie 10 years ago, we had lots of talks and conversations, and he came to Israel a few times, spending time in our house, and we were talking a lot about Israel. And he had many times he wanted to do a plunge in Israel. We did a very small one with him with Sami in Tent of All Nations in the West Bank. And then he was talking a lot about plunge in Israel, but it didn't happen. The other thing about Bernie is when we were together with Bernie in Sri Lanka, I was at the beginning of my connections with the Zen Peacemakers, and I was very naive, and I asked Bernie lots of times to run a bearing witness retreat in Israel, Palestine. And I asked him again and again, till all of a sudden he shouted at me and he said, I'm not going to do any bearing witness retreat in Israel, so this is end of conversation. And he was shouting very, loudly, like Bernie knew how to do it, and I was very frightened. And the third thing, but I knew that he wants to do it, so I felt him all the times, and also now I feel him in my back, even urging me to do it. And also that he had a bad experience with Israel, and I felt like I want to correct this experience. Then we had our meetings with the Southern European Circle, and then Barbara, I felt Barbara is pushing me to do it. So I felt like it's Barbara and I, in a way, doing it. then came the thing that when we, and I think the idea was to start, and it helped a lot, and it will help me also with the next one, which has to be much bigger, that we decided to start with the alternative ceremony, Palestinian and Israeli. So that gave the frame. And yes, and then I let it go. I did nothing. Unless I only knew about the date, but that's it. And also I had my practicing before with Barbara and Roland about my Rakusu and Jukai and da-da-da. So, and then all of a sudden, 2 months before, I understood that it has to happen. And then I tried to be, to empty myself. And after a week, everything came. All the program, all the people that I want to meet. So it was kind of an emptiness and not knowing, but then I had to think about, I felt that I have to know what I want them to bear witness to. Like, is it about activists? Is it about the situation, Palestinians, the conflict? So I think that was my way of planning it. And also I had and I have Tani, which is, very helpful because I know the people, because I used to be, and I still peace activist in Israel, and I'm connected with many movements in Israel. But the idea was that it's not about peace activity. It's about, that's what I got from the practicing, that we are coming to this activity with compassion and with not knowing, which is not regular with peace activists in Israel. Compassion and not knowing. Everybody knows everything in Israel. And the peace activists in Israel are fighters. They are almost like in the army sometimes. So it had to be a big change, and then we had some problems because we had a meeting that I planned, and then it was cancelled because it was Israeli Palestinian in Arabic village in Israel, and it was cancelled because there was some killing there. And then we stayed in Bethlehem. We went for one night. We stayed for 2. So we had to change. But it's about being flexible. It wouldn't be able to be flexible at the next one, which has to be much bigger. So from that one, which didn't happen, and I'm finishing just now, I got I think I needed, and I need much more support. The first support and urge I got when I was in Switzerland with Roland. Thank you, Roland. And yes, it's about coping with fears and fears of, not succeeding, being, as Genro said, being responsible to many people, especially in Israel, which is unpredictable, and to say the least. And to arrange everything, the meetings and the plan, for me, it's very easy. But being responsible for the people, and also all these logistic arrangements, like having rooms for everybody, because the previous one, everybody slept in our house. So this is very shortly what I can share with you. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Iris. I actually took some notes. Maybe we'll come back to that after we hear from others. I'm curious to hear from Niamh, if you'd like to share a little bit about your work.
Sure. So last January, I held a Bearing Witness Retreat Day around the theme of bearing witness to violence against women and girls, which is a very big theme. And as I was putting it together, I was thinking about it for some time, and I was talking to Miko a little bit, and yourself, Rami, as well, about the elements to include in a day like that. The day was January the 6th. It was a significant day. In Ireland, it's a sort of traditional holiday for women after all the work of the Christmas period. But more significantly, it was the day that a young girl was abducted in Dublin City. And it was really she who I wanted to commemorate in some way. So the more I delved into exploring what form this could take, it sort of expanded into something more broad around violence against women and girls in general. And a big part of it was the experience of being at Auschwitz and reading the names on the tracks. And the women's charity, the women's domestic violence charity here, had published a list of the names of women who had been murdered or were missing and presumed murdered since the 90s when those records began. It was 226 names. So there was a feeling of the ingredients sort of dropping in to place. And it sort of came together, but there was a sort of an urgency around the date. And also there was a question for me in bearing witness to something so big. Where was the not knowing for me when I really believe that this is a terrible thing? How does not knowing come into something so upsetting for me and what I'm offering to other people? And that's still a question for me. But on the day itself, there were the elements of, or the ingredients of hearing from a leader in the field who we gave donations to. So people had raised malas as part of it, which is a practice I really appreciate in including other people in our practice. And then we went to the place in the Dublin mountains outside the city where this young Roma woman's body had been found some years after her abduction, and it felt important to go up to that place and have our ceremony there where we read the names and we sang and remembered other people as well. And then when we came back to the city, and it was really, just to say, just being in that place was, it's hard to put into words, but it was very, very beautiful, very, very moving. And it sort of, I think, tipped us all, I think, into a state of not knowing, of just being able to bear witness in that place. It was a kind of a silence among us. So we came back to the city and we had a kind of a shortened council circle. I really wanted to make sure there was a council circle as part of the day at the end. So as the organizer, it was a small group, by the way, there was about 6 of us, but as the organizer, there was a bit of a tension in being drawn into what time is it, when is the sun going down, we have to get back to town, all this sort of logistical stuff, and coming back to just being present in the place. And to how the other women were bearing witness and expressing that. So it was, yeah, it's hard to put into words, but it was a wonderful experience. And yeah, that's all I can really say.
Thank you so much, Niamh. Miko, Koho, would you like to say a few words? Yeah, Miko.
Yeah. For me, I think one of the most important things about creating these plunges or retreats or bearing witness retreats is the part of research that's been done by the organizer. And for me, especially the street retreat was a really kind of like eye-opening experience, because I wasn't really aware about homelessness as an issue here in Helsinki before I started doing the research, because it's not a kind of like a visible part of the cityscape here in Helsinki. You don't really see the homeless. But as I kind of like made a list of different organizations which were working with the homeless and the shelters and so on, I started seeing it from a completely different perspective, and also began to respect the people who are working with them. And yeah, it was an eye-opening experience. But there's lots of organizing in bearing witness retreats, especially the bearing witness retreat we have here in Finland, because we have 4 different locations and different speakers and different places where to go to have lunch, and bus drivers and places for the council and organizing breakfasts and all that. So there's a lot to do. But it's also it also kind of like creates this group of people who are willing to do that and see the importance in that. And we've been really lucky having international participants here. This year we will have a person from Australia, from United States and Holland and Belgium and so on. And on the streets we had people from 5 different countries coming here. So it's been really special. It's been mostly international people, very few locals. This year we will have only 1 person from Finland for the bearing witness retreat. So thank you.
Yes, so in my experience, this bearing witness retreat in Auschwitz, but mainly in streets, it's about building bridges. So we must organize in a very, very good way in order to have something about to make changes, because life is about changing. And the retreat in Brazil, that is a country where we are used to deal with, chaotic situations. It's impossible to discipline Brazilian people. And to be in the streets is about to be alive. It's to deal with real life and to find contentment in this experience. Also, last retreat in Como in Italy, it was so good to meet these people, people that in some way couldn't have reasons to be joyful, but they are so generous, so kind. It's a big school. And mainly in my experience about to open my heart as a human being to accept another dimension of myself. And then I can look for as Bernie taught many times, about oneness of life. It's about to find new mirrors for myself. And then I can see myself from another perspective. My experience about bearing witness and Plunge is about to look for myself in a wider perspective, but not in a theoretical way. It's real. It's right now, right here. So I must deal with real life in a very unexpected situations and find contentment in that. So organization, but not controlling nothing. This is my experience.
Thank you, Koho. I'm thinking of kind of Jill's questions around the structure, and what I kept hearing from all of you is how flexibility is such a big component of this. And the reason I've been really attracted to these plunges and what attracted me to Bernie's work in the first place is that it's really pushed me to really practice this in terms of not knowing and bearing witness and responding from there. So you know, I've had the privilege of working with Genro and with Roland and Barbara on the Bearing Witness retreats with the Native Americans and in Auschwitz. And, you know, Auschwitz is a little bit different because it's a retreat. We're really like creating a closed kind of container. But my experience working with, actually specifically with Genro, because we've been working together on the Native American program so much, is how much there is no structure. First of all, we create the structure, but the structure is created simply by what we're bearing witness to. And I've noticed the times where I got very enamored with pieces of the schedule, and I thought, oh, this is going to be really great, and then it needs to change. And because the needs are changing. So for me, it's also what I'm finding is the encouragement to constantly bear witness to what are the needs of the moment. And I appreciate Genro was saying, you know, some of those needs need to be treated like right away. Sometimes things come up and they need to be acknowledged right away. The other thing that I really appreciate about the plunges is that they really push me to train by doing. I'm not being trained in one place and then try to apply it somewhere else. I'm just being thrown into a situation and just need to wake up to it. I thought of that again, that word makom, which also has in it the verb kum, to literally stand up, wake up. So in the word for place, there's the word stand up, wake up. And I really just resonated with how when Eve told me the story of her idea, because it was so married to a specific place. And I even just now when you shared about it, and just imagining you with this group and myself there at the location of where that woman was found, I could feel it. And I think it also testifies to why these sort of meetings are important. Usually I can imagine Bernie saying, what are you talking about plunges? You don't talk about plunges, you plunge. And I find that there is importance in reflecting. And I also invite everybody in June 17th, we're going to do a council like this, but it will just be council. So it's not going to be a conversation. Just about experiences from our street retreats, to kind of reconnect back into those experiences and maybe inspire us to go back. So I'm curious for the last few minutes we have, from anybody else from the participants who just has something to share, whether if it's a question or not, or just how this has been. I'm seeing we have some visitors. How this has been inspiring you, dumbfounding you, confusing. Yeah, George, please.
Thank you, Rami. I wanted to mention that Zen, excuse me, Zen teacher Norman Fisher has written a new book entitled This World Could Be Otherwise. This world could be otherwise. I have not read it yet. I will have done so by the 17th, but it is a deep dive into bodhicitta and compassion, and then being better able to act. And also, I'm very grateful for having learned so much today, and I thank you all. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, George. Bob, please.
I just want to say thank you to you for organizing this meeting today, and to all of you. I feel very moved by all of the things that we've been talking about, and I find it extremely propitious to have this experience today for where I am in my life right now. So I want to just express my gratitude.
Catherine.
Oh, I forget that I'm on. I wanted to say thank you to those people who shared their experiences creating a plunge or, a bearing witness retreat. It's interesting, since I've learned about this approach, this way of being, this possibility, like I have on my own, like things will happen in my day and I'll go, oh, that could be a bearing witness experience, or oh, that could be a plunge, or that it's just our world and the way we live in it now. There's so much opportunity for this, and so I got excited thinking that maybe down the road it would be possible to create something, or I would love to first participate in many of the different kinds of plunges that are already being organized by many of you. Kinneret, I would love to come down to, because you're not far, to Santa Fe area and support something that you're doing there. And so I'm just grateful. Thank you all for your wisdom, and look forward to seeing you in the plunge.
Matt, please.
Yeah, I think two things. One is I also want to share my gratitude for those who, kind of that middle group, who did share about being moved by some observation that they were making, and being moved to explore it in a more deep way. And it's very encouraging for me, because living in DC, I think that so many times of my day that I notice something that I kind of want to dig deeper in. And so I'm really looking forward to, trying to peel back that layer and look a little bit deeper and sit with those things. And so I just have a lot of encouragement from hearing other people, kind of exploring that on their own, and then knowing how to get support and all these other more logistical items, and that it is possible. And so I'm really encouraged. So, and really grateful for those that are putting themselves out there. So thank you.
Thanks, Matt. We have only a couple of more minutes. I want to just check in with Nicole if she'd like to say anything, because I can't see her. I can see you, Nicole.
Yes, I can hear you and see you too.
Okay.
For me, it was great to be part of it, and really I would like to thank all the participants. And yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. So I saw Iris, I saw Miko. Yeah.
I only to say I only want to say thank you, Koho, because yes, it is about, for me, the insight is about planning a plunge, organizing it, and not controlling it. So for me, this phrase is very important: organizing but not controlling, meaning that you can let go, you can be flexible, and you are not the only one who is responsible, which is the main thing that makes me, worried about plunges. Then I remember only one sentence, that when Bernie was shouting at me, I'm not going to do any bearing witness retreat in Israel, Palestine. If you want, do it by yourself. Then I will come. And I thought about not organizing, but about controlling. That's why I thought I cannot do it, because I have to control. And this sentence, organizing and not controlling, for me is very meaningful. So thank you for.
Thanks. Nico?
Yeah, I was thinking about the place, because there's lots of these interesting places that's been involved with retreats that we have had. We slept just outside our building at the park that we go to play with our son, and that was interesting experience in the street retreat, and to bake on the areas where we normally hang out anyway. So it was an interesting experience. But also with the Bearing Witness retreat now, because we've been going to these prison camps, which are just outside the residential areas, and some of them are functionally military compounds. And it's kind of interesting to work with the military, to ask for permissions and ask them to guide us and so on. And to have these places which are really reminiscent of Auschwitz, because they were built by the Soviets and by the Russians during the imperial time. But anyway, they have this kind of like very strong power, and I have some relatives that went to these camps, and yeah, they're horrible places, but no one speaks about them, and you normally don't have access to these places, and it's kind of interesting. But lately we've been kind of like mostly involved with the climate actions and working with the very young teenage girls, maybe mostly with the Extinction Rebellion, and talk about meditation and what does the engaged Buddhism might have something to offer for them for this terrible anxiety they're experiencing for the climate crisis. And yeah, that feels really, really important. That's a huge plunge for me to kind of like experience that firsthand. But it was very wonderful to meet all of you, and hope to see you in Auschwitz in November.
Thank you, Miko. So thank you, everyone. I'm just acknowledging the time and really appreciating everybody's listening and sharing. And I would love to just maybe close with something that Genro quoted Bernie of, in terms of us plunging in what we fear. And it's something that I haven't heard for a long time. And it really puts into different perspective what I aim to plunge into. It's not about what I like, and it's not about what interests me, and it's not about what I'm angry about. It's what I'm fearful of. How interesting. So thank you for plunging together for these 90 minutes and for joining in this larger plunge that we've all embarked on. And I invite everyone to join on any of our further calls. And like I said, there's another one in June, and we'll just be doing counsel about street retreats. And these are really wonderful ways for us to continue just connecting this international family. So thank you so much, and happy plunging. I'm going to unmute everyone. And thank you. And thank you, Genro, Barbara, Roland. Thank you for sharing also. And
thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
It was wonderful to see you all. Thank you.
Great.
Bye, Rami.
Bye.
Thanks, Rami.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.